No, no. So Justine, wondering if you could share like one or two stories that really demonstrate how incarcerated women have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. For those who haven't had the chance to read this or want to read this, you know, just explain some of that for us.
So I think Dr. Resnick, is that the correct pronunciation? I hope I'm saying that right. I mean, she's correct to say, are they disproportionately impacted as compared to incarcerated men? Maybe not. They are my focus. I think they're differently impacted. Certainly there are overlaps. I think, for example, women have perhaps different needs, perhaps different relationships. I think in terms of them being mothers, that is a big part of the struggles of women who are incarcerated. And for example, Nicole Adamando is a woman in New York that I've reported on at length. I wrote a lengthy article about her, but she's in Bedford Hills, and she's in prison for defending herself against an abusive partner, and she's gotten 20 years to life for that. She's a mother of two young children, and she is relatively lucky in the sense that she has a very supportive sister who takes care of those kids, and those kids were seeing her every week. And that was sort of what kept that whole family going. And she got to Bedford Hills. She was new. She'd been there since February. The children were able to come every week. And that prison did allow that, did have a sort of a nursery and an area where they could be, and they could be for hours. And that sustained them. And then after the trauma of going to prison, after the trauma of that isolation, being ripped out from her community, being ripped away from her children, their visitation was completely stopped, and she could not physically touch her children. And I'm not sure they had any kind of video calls or anything like that for months. So for both her and the children, that's particularly devastating. Not to say that there can't be a father in that situation, but it is a situation much more likely to happen to women. And I know I was told there were women in certain prisons who say their children lived far away, and their families had plans to come see them. And, they were going to travel, and then visitation was just cut off. And often these are families with not very much money. And, these are things people save up for, and it just destroys these kids as well as these mothers. So that's one story. There are so many. There was one, Shwanika Patterson, who was in the story. She's a woman also in New York, just coincidentally, who did get COVID. And she had asthma as a pre-existing condition. And I remember, it wasn't in the story, but I remember speaking to her mother. She and her mother talk every day. They do not have the money to do it, but they're forced because of these corporations that run these the phones in prisons to spend, $6 a day just talking, which is a lot if you do it every day, but it sustains, again, the person in prison and her mother. And the mother had not been to see her in, I think it was 6 or 7 years, because she didn't have a vehicle and she couldn't afford to get there. She had just, after 7 years, bought a car and was planning to go see her daughter, who she talked to every day, for 7 years. And then COVID happened and visitation was stopped. And again, she couldn't see her child. And then her child got sick.